Hi, this is Paul Salt from iPhone Dev TV. I want to show you some common problems that you might have encountered in this Bouncing Labels iPhone app. Now, the most common issue that people have when they're getting started is not knowing how to diagnose and recover from a crash or an error within Xcode. So let me show you some common scenarios. The first one is when you mistakenly type a certain method, and that's usually when you're doing something with a selector. So right here on the viewDidLoad method, we added the selector message. Now, if I were to get rid of this, the colon here, and I were to rerun, we wouldn't see any issues when we built and ran the application, but we would see an issue when we go to tap. And so if I were to tap, we get a very common crash, and this will result in 1-star reviews on the App Store. Most likely, you won't get approved if this is happening in a very prominent place in your application. So let me show you how to fix this problem, because this is a very beginner mistake, and you'll learn how to find these and fix these throughout this course. So you might look over here, but there's not a whole lot of information that you'll gather from there just yet. Then you'll see that this is a thread 1 signal SIG abort. That means that this is a crash. Down on the bottom here, we're going to see a stack trace and an error message. And this is the important part when you're trying to figure out what's going on and what's wrong, because this error message is something that you can Google, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So just make sure that you have this right tab here open so that you can see the full console. And if you had the variable views open so that it's split like this, you can just go ahead, click that to hide it so that we can read all of the text, and then we can make this a little bit bigger. So if we just scroll up, this will give us a lot of insight into what's going on here. The first thing that we'll see here is that we're in the Bouncing Labels project. That's this one. If you were working with open source code, you might see one of the components here, along with the code file or the name of the class, and that's the view controller class. So we have the viewController.swift file if we look over here. Next, we see that we're trying to invoke a method called handleTapGesture. Now, if you're a pretty normal person, you would scroll through here and you'd say, well, I have that method. I have handleTapGesture. And this is where that colon becomes really important, because that colon means that there's an extra parameter. And what we told it was a handleTapGesture without an extra parameter, which would look something like this, and that is different. So not having that stuff inside of the parentheses is a different method signature. So if I were to run this, we would see that it doesn't crash. But that's not what we want. We want that parameter, because this parameter is really useful if you want to do anything with the touch input that the user is giving us. Now, right now, we don't care too much. A tap gesture, it's not as important, but something like a pan gesture where you want to drag something across the screen and throw it using the velocity of the finger, then it's a lot more important to have this extra parameter. So we fix that issue by putting that colon here. Now, maybe you're a little bit dyslexic or you mistype something. You leave out a letter, you put them in the wrong order, you do anything like that, we're going to be at the same error message. It's going to crash when you tap because it's the wrong chunk of code that we're trying to run that doesn't actually exist. So once we find out what the offending piece of code is, that's going to be this right here, we'll see this message, unrecognized selector sent to instance. Now, this is the part that you want to Google. It's usually this first message or it's the second message. And you can copy this whole line, but you're not going to use that all when you go to Google. So if I open up a new browser window and I go to Google, and in Google I paste this, I search for this, I'm going to get no results. And the reason is because there's too much other text that's not important. So get rid of a memory address that looks like the 0x. We don't need that. That's not important. And then if you scroll back here, you'll see all of this extra text. We don't need that either. Now, depending on if you're using open source code, this first part right here might be important. So we can go ahead and search and see if this provides any results. Now, if it's not open source code, you're probably going to get no results like I did just here. So go ahead, remove that, and research. Now, here's the next step. We're finding this message, and that's great, but we're also going to find answers that relate to Objective-C or potentially other programming languages. So what you'll want to do here is once you've isolated the error message, put it in quotes, and then say the language that you're working with. Say Swift or say Objective-C, and then search. This is going to give you relevant errors that other people have, and then solutions. And a lot of times you're going to find the solution on stackoverflow.com, which you can see there are a lot of issues on Stack Overflow with regard to a unrecognized selector. And much like you, other people don't know what they're doing. So you'll see people will be very honest. They're new to programming. They don't understand what happened. You're in the same boat. This is a good site to get answers for different questions. So you can post questions here. You can also post questions on the forum that I have set up on iPhoneDev.tv. All right, so if we just scroll down, you'll see some comments about the question, and then you will see a solution. You're looking for a solution that's got a green check mark or has a higher number. That means more people like the answers. And if you don't see one of those, maybe these aren't the right solutions. All right, and so here we see this is a good solution. This is something that I would probably upvote. The person who asked the question actually didn't say that this was the solution, but this looks good to me. The reason is that little colon here is very important. That means that we're going to have a parameter right here. So that's what's going on. Their code's not exactly what we have, but this is going to give you an idea of what you need to start looking for. And that's one of the things that you need to do as a computer programmer is you're trying to troubleshoot and fix problems. It's much like being a mechanic for a car. You're going to have to diagnose different issues. Is it the oil? Is it the timing belt? Are the wheels still on? Did you turn the car on? Just going through the dumb questions to try and figure out, okay, how can I get this working again? So that's a common error. Let's go back by hitting this back button, or you can jump back to the project navigator to get to your source code. And we can go back here and scroll down to where we had our method. I guess I went way too far. And it looks like we just need to fix this typo. So I did TPA instead of tap. So let's make it tap so that it matches. Again, this has to match this right here. And then we'll hit play. So now we tap and it works fine. So that's one issue. The other issue that you can run into is when you're working with something like an animate with duration, if you miss a parenthesis, so if I just get rid of that and we build and run, you'll notice that we have some really strange issues. It says, could not find an overlord for plus that accepts the supplied arguments. Now, this is one of those situations where one little syntax error, one little typo can cause a slew of problems, which can look really intimidating, but we can fix all of these problems with just one thing. Now, let's look at our compiler error. So this one, it's letting us know that there's missing a right parentheses, but then this first issue is closer to the actual problem, and so that's sort of giving us some clues. Okay, maybe we're missing a symbol here. And we do see a little hash mark right here, which means something is missing, but there's no suggestion down here. Now, if we look at the suggestion, it's going to ask us to insert a comma. And we're going to go ahead and we'll try and build again. And that's not quite right. So in these cases, look to make sure that your parentheses or your curly braces have partners, and they always come in pairs. So if I put this down, you'll notice all of those error messages went away. And the neat little trick that you can do to make sure that your parentheses are balanced, that means you have a left and a right, is that you can go right and left over, or left and right over this, and it should show you which one matches. We can do the same thing with this symbol right here. With the curly brace, you'll see that that matches to the one just above it. Now, you can embed all of these things and have inner parentheses. So like this one right here, we can match that one and look at that. So that's one of the first things that you should check out. Another common mistake is missing the comma right here. If you're letting Xcode automatically insert code for you, you don't have to worry too much. It will insert that. It'll also insert the names and these colons for you. So those are some things. We're going to learn more about how all of this code actually works. Right now, I want you to focus on just getting the app working, typing the code that you see here, and experimenting a little bit. So with that said, just be careful when you copy and paste, and make sure that your parentheses and your quotation marks all come in pairs, because that's going to prevent a lot of common bugs that can result in tons of errors when we're in Xcode. And if you can find the right spot to put one, you can fix a lot of different issues in your application. The other main issue that beginners have is that they insert a breakpoint. Now, when we're writing code and we run it, it pretty much runs instantly. But when we're trying to figure out why an application is crashing, we don't want it to run instantly. We actually want to step through the code. And so that's one of the nice things about Xcode, is that it has a debugger that allows us to look for bugs. Now, old computers used to have moths and different bugs that would cause the actual computer to shut down because they would electrocute the bug and cause a short circuit and everything would fail. Now, when we're talking about bugs, we're not talking about that. We're talking about typos, we're talking about mistakes, we're talking about logic errors. And so one of the ways we can find where the bugs are is if we can stop the execution of the program as it's running in our development mode. And so if you click right here, this is a common source of bugs, and it's not really a bug, but it makes you think that something's not working. So if I click on line 39 here, you'll notice that a little blue flag appeared. And if I click twice, you'll see that it sort of gets grayed out. And if we were to run this right now, our app would look like it crashed. But the important distinguishing factor here is that it says thread 1 breakpoint 1.1. And a breakpoint is not a crash. A breakpoint is this little thing right here. So there's two ways to fix this. You can right-click and say delete breakpoint, or you can disable it. Now, if you don't want it, just delete it because you didn't really need it. If you're not debugging, you don't need them, so just remove them. The other way to get rid of them is to just drag them off until you see the little shape appear, and then you'll get that nice little animation and it disappears. So that will fix that, but your application is not running yet. And the last step to this process is to either continue running the program or you can start it up again. So most of the time you can just hit the continue and everything will start up like it normally does and you'll be good to go. So those are the common issues that I want you to look out for. And those are how you can solve them so that you can continue making your iPhone app without getting too frustrated and too lost on why your code doesn't work. Remember, what we type to the computer needs to be very precise. Capitalization matters. The different symbols are very important. They come in pairs. And if you have an issue, there's two things you can do that I highly recommend. Either you can start over from scratch, or you can try and undo some of the changes that you last did and see if you can figure out how to get it working again. All right, if you have any other questions, just head on over to the forums and post them there.